afraid of the dark.
Back in '96, when I was a college student, I loved seeking out adventures. I had a friend named Spud, so Spud and I, whenever we had some free time from our studies, would immediately go looking for these adventures. We even bought a beat-up Ford to simplify our trips, and being handy guys, we turned it into a fully functional vehicle. So, it was 1996, January. Exams were over, we were on break, and there was nothing to do. That winter, I remember, wasn't the coldest, but there was a lot of snow. The temperature was around freezing, and you could even make a snowman outside. But let's get to the point. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in the dorm, and suddenly a very happy Spud burst into the room. That day, he had finally won over a girl he had been pursuing for a long time. But that wasn't why he was so excited. Spud had heard rumors that there was a cannibal village not far from our town. Naturally, I laughed at Spud, immediately saying it was complete nonsense. But Spud insisted on his story and told me the legend. The country was in ruins. A village had fallen into poverty, and people had turned to drinking. They began by killing and eating each other out of hunger. And then they started setting traps on the highway to rob and eat unlucky motorists. He also explained that human meat was the best for humans, and once someone tried it, they would crave it for life. I laughed again, but for the fun of it, I agreed to check it out. Spud pulled out a map of the area and pointed out where this ominous village was located. I remember the name Luminous Hollow, with nearby villages named Happy Valley and Lower Muck. Seems like a fun place, I said, scratching my head. Without wasting time, we packed matches, a couple of cans of stew, a couple of flashlights, a flare gun, and our lucky charm, bro, into our backpack. Bro was a copper coin with a smiling face stamped on both sides. This thing had earned its name because it brought us luck. My grandma had given it to me as a talisman. I had grown accustomed to it, and we took it with us everywhere. We set out deliberately at dusk to make it scarier. The trip to Luminous Hollow took less than an hour. Driving leisurely and chatting cheerfully, we headed towards adventure. I kept laughing, thinking about the nonsense of drunken cannibals. But Spud grew unusually serious, insisting he believed in it all, and was genuinely scared. Meanwhile, the highway grew darker, there were almost no passing cars, and the atmosphere became tense on its own. Spud laid out a plan. We would leave the car somewhere near Lower Muck and proceed towards Luminous Hollow via back roads. I agreed, not wanting to ruin the atmosphere of a typical horror movie. I began to lose my skepticism and started wondering, what if it's true? If people in the cities had gone wild, robbing and killing each other in droves, what could be happening in the countryside? We reached Lower Muck silently, each lost in thought. We turned onto a dirt road about 300 yards before reaching the village. We drove a bit further and left the car. Dressed in camouflage and boots, we moved through the underbrush towards our destination. Lower Muck lived up to its name. A decayed, rusted playground, a couple of dozen gloomy, half-ruined houses, frozen feces everywhere, and heaps of garbage, and not a single living soul. Guess they all got eaten in Luminous Hollow, I said, half jokingly, half seriously. Spud chuckled nervously in response. After exploring Lower Muck, we confirmed it was indeed deserted. We felt genuinely scared, partly from the sight of abandoned houses and partly from the clear sense of being watched. Something alive was moving in the woods besides us. Probably dogs, we reassured ourselves, though we didn't truly believe it. After discussing the possibility of returning to the car and heading home, we decided to see it through. Passing through a small forest, we reached Luminous Hollow. It was no different from Lower Muck, another abandoned village, but without the playground. There were no signs of life, except for a vague feeling of being watched. which we dismissed as paranoia. Sighing in relief and spitting in disappointment, we decided to take a break and figure out our next move. You'd think we'd just head back to the car and get out of there, but our youth and excitement wouldn't let us. We decided to spend the night in one of the houses. Breaking into a half-rotted house was easy, and we began exploring its contents. Aside from old Soviet furniture, there was nothing interesting at first glance, but when we found the photographs, a chill ran down our spines. The faces in all the photos were blurred. The same was true for the few portraits on the walls. We found several family photo albums in a closet and went through all the photos. The same thing every time. Adults, elders, children, all with indistinguishable faces. Our curiosity and fear grew. We broke into another house and searched for more photos. To our horror, the same story, blurred faces. Terrified, we decided it was best to leave. Walking briskly towards our car, I was talking to calm our nerves and make it less scary. I didn't look back. Suddenly I realized I didn't hear Spud's footsteps. I turned around. No one was behind me. My heart sank. I started shaking, tears welling up. I tried convincing myself Spud was playing a prank on me. Timidly calling his name and getting no response, I cursed my fate and went back to look for him. Returning to Luminous Hollow, I first checked the house we had broken into. What I saw there paralyzed me with fear. An old woman wrapped in rags was sitting on the floor, stroking a head in her lap. I realized it was Spud's head. I ran screaming in terror. I ran until I tripped over a root and fell into the mud. Only then did I look back and see dark silhouettes chasing me. Gathering all my strength, I ran as fast as I could. Laughter echoed behind me the entire time. I ran for a long time, feeling my strength waning, but there was no sign of salvation ahead. Just the dark, sinister forest. I remembered we hadn't walked through the forest for long. I should have reached the car by now, but the darkness wouldn't part. I realized I was surrounded. The hideous voices and laughter grew clearer. My side started to ache terribly, and my vision blurred. I lost strength and fell, howling like a wounded animal. Everything was a blur. I heard whispers and giggles. I was going insane. Then I lost consciousness.